Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining PropFlow's Green Homes webinar series for mortgage advisors, finance and property professionals to understand more about how brokers can engage property owners to green their homes. Great to know so many of you are listening today, so thanks for joining us. I'm Pam Barbato, founder of Action Net Zero, community interest company. Our purpose is to help accelerate sustainable change, and our mission is to empower communities, people and businesses to take affordable actions to tackle the climate and ecological crises. I'm delighted to be facilitating today's webinar, joined by our expert panel, who I'll introduce shortly. But in today's session, we'll be exploring how can brokers engage property owners, and specifically looking at the role of brokers and intermediaries in supporting customers to green their homes. What are the opportunities and the benefits for them, and when's a good time to start the engagement process? So thinking about how brokers can support property owners actually throughout their journey. We'll also be looking at how energy efficiency affects affordability and shining a light on some great impactful improvements that homeowners can take. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about general points of the webinar now. So you can hear us and we can't hear you, which is perfectly normal. We'll expect the webinar to last about an hour. We've got questions. You can ask questions at any time using two sets of functionality. If you've arrived on the Riverside app, you'll see a little speech mark, which you can click and enter the chat. And if you joined through LinkedIn, then please post the questions in the comments. We'll have a dedicated session after we've heard from our panellists. We're also recording the session and we'll circulate it to you all afterwards so you can watch it back. So on to the programme for today. It's great, unfortunately, Rosie Fish from Habito, who was due to be joining us through unforeseen circumstances, unfortunately can't join us, but it's my pleasure to now invite the rest of our panel. We've got Luke Loveridge, founder and CEO of PropFlow, James Chutter, Corporate Account Manager, Leeds Building Society, Andrew Parkin, Technical Development Director, Elmhurst Energy, and Richard Merritt, Managing Director from Alexander Hall. It'd be great if each of you can now tell us a little bit more about yourselves and your roles, please. So handing over to Luke first.
Yeah, thanks, Pam. And welcome everyone. I'm Luke Loveridge, the founder and CEO of PropFlow, and we provide essentially a retrofit as a service so that you can actually concentrate on what you're good at, which is providing financing and assisting your customers so that you don't have to worry about that complex end-to-end process, which is energy efficiency and improving your homes. So we were the first one-stop shop in a mortgage lender, an estate agent, and a mortgage broker. So we've got quite a lot of expertise in the industry, and together we're engaging over 1.4 million homeowners. That's me, Pam.
Brilliant, thanks, Luke. James, would you like to come in?
Good morning, everyone. My name's James Chutter. I'm a corporate account manager from Leeds Building Society. I've been in the industry around 15 years, and my key role is working and networking between the major mortgage broker clubs and networks, but I also work very closely with the Green Finance Institute, and I'm also part of the Mortgage Climate Action Group. So I've got a really keen interest around green mortgage, green lending, and how we can sort of use this space to help towards a better future, really.
Brilliant, thanks, James. And Andrew?
Good morning, everyone. Andrew Parkin. I am here on behalf of a company called Elmhurst Energy. I'm the technical director there, and our business specialises in the provision of energy performance certificates. We're one of the accreditation bodies in the UK, and we have 15,000 members approximately, producing over 1 million EPCs and other reports annually.
Great, thank you. And last but not least, Richard.
Morning, everyone. I'm Richard Merritt, Managing Director of Alexander Hall. We're one of London's largest mortgage advice firms, responsible for over £2 billion worth of lending last year. Very close to the purchase market, first-time buyers, sister company of Foxtons, and lots of people who are acquiring homes. In the green capacity, I also chair the Mortgage Climate Action Group, which is a group of primarily distributors, but industry experts who are working together, collaborating to raise awareness about the part that mortgages and our market can play in driving sustainability.
Brilliant. Thank you all. As I'm sure you'll agree, a fantastic panel of experts for our discussion today. So we're now going to share 3 short presentations with some of the panel questions in between before we actually start our live Q&A. So Luke, it'd be great if you could start. I know you're going to be sharing insights on why, when and how brokers can engage customers on greening their homes.
Sure. Let me just share my screen. Is that showing?
All good.
So yeah, hello everyone. In this presentation, I will be briefly covering some key trigger points to engage your customers in retrofitting and including some examples. But first, apart from being a good thing to do, I just want to briefly recap on why you should be engaging your customers in energy efficiency. So firstly, demand is rising. Solar panels installations have increased nearly 700% in the last 4 years, and heat pump deployments are also increasing. And this is being driven by higher energy bills, government targets, and increasing incentives. By considering the longer-term needs of your customers, you'll also be delivering added value, which in turn can help increase your brand reputation and retention. And I think, importantly, it's also an area where you could potentially grow revenue. So you could potentially make, based on our estimates, over £700 per property from incentives provided by improvement suppliers. So there is a real opportunity there. So when is the best time to engage your customers? So there are a number of different trigger points where homeowners and landlords could be naturally engaged. For example, their boiler breaks down or when they retire and they're looking for reduced bills. What I'll be touching upon briefly are new purchases, remortgages and compliance. So in terms of new purchases, 47% of Britons are looking to make improvements to their homes. And the first year after purchase is usually an important time where people do renovations. So a really good example here is where Yopa has been quite innovative actually with buyers, where they wait a few weeks after the exchange of contracts and then they send our GreenVal retrofit tool to their customers. And this forms part of a wider welcome pack of services to the new owners that Yopa provides. This is a market-leading retrofit tool that enables people to view a report on their property, select improvements, and then get direct quotes from improvement suppliers at the right time. There's also a large wave of people remortgaging this year, so especially encountering higher rates than that they've been used to. So Habito, we've worked with, they've used our portfolio audit tool to actually analyse their existing customers to develop tailored messaging for people who are due to remortgage within the next 6 months. Again, they then use our green retrofit tool to engage, and then they track progress of engagement with that tool as well. This means the homeowner is much better informed about additional borrowing needs prior to remortgaging, and then they can get the most appropriate product for their longer term needs. And for private landlords, although the current government, minimum energy efficiency standards is being scrapped, the current ones are still in force. So that's currently at E to be able to rent out. And the government still has a target for all properties to be upgraded to at least an energy rating of C by 2035. So we work with Molo, who's primarily a buy-to-let lender. And they used our portfolio audit tool to identify properties at risk now and in the future. And then again, they've used our GreenVal retrofit tool to then engage those higher risk properties. So what are some considerations when engaging customers in retrofit? Just to summarize, firstly, understanding the risks and opportunities that your customers is really useful, and particularly to tailor targeting on specific segments of your customers, which will most likely be wanting to retrofit. Secondly, getting an understanding of where you can best raise awareness in your customer journeys is really important. And then understanding what tools and resources can be used at different points. Obviously, we've got a set, but there are other tools out there as well. And lastly, energy efficient retrofitting isn't just a one-time transaction. People might get loft insulation 1 year, a couple of years later they might get solar. When their boiler breaks down, they then might want to replace it with a heat pump. So all of these improvements might need financing. So it's a really great opportunity to essentially be there for your customers when they need that at the right time. Thank you for listening.
Great, thanks, Luke. Some really interesting insights there, not least the 47% of new homeowners planning to renovate and 1.5 million of fixed rate mortgages coming to an end in 2024. So clearly some brilliant opportunities for brokers to start to have those conversations. So it'd be great to now kickstart the panel discussion by actually focusing on the role of brokers in greening our housing stocks. So Richard, over to you if you'd like to give us some outline from your perspective.
Yeah, sure. So I think the first starting point is how crucial brokers are in the entire mortgage and home buying process. The intermediary market now accounts for in excess of 85% of all mortgages done. I think the level of complexity that we've seen sort of post-COVID and through the rising interest rate climate really sort of demonstrates the value of advice and the crucial role that brokers play. So they are the frontline people that are going to be talking to most customers, and here the role of a broker is to sort of try and help people save money, right? And with rising interest rates, that's pretty tough at the moment. But the industry has sort of focused on large scale retrofit, but there's actually lots and lots of things that customers can do. Small behavioural changes, small cost effective changes that they can make to their home that can actually save them money on their energy bills. And therefore, I personally believe that brokers have a responsibility to become more aware of that and be the touch point for those customers. I think the one key point to make is brokers are not expected to be green experts. They are mortgage experts, and they provide the finance solutions. If a customer is keen to explore what they can do, then the broker should be introducing or facilitating them to the appropriate tools or education for the customer then to understand the green choices that they want to make.
Brilliant. Thanks, Richard. I think it's a really nuanced piece, isn't it? How much information is the right amount of information for brokers to be able to obviously pass on to those customers? So I would actually really like to ask that question more widely. What and how much information do we think that non-retrofit and energy professionals, brokers in particular, need to know about those home improvements to support their customers? So Andrew, obviously, it'd be great to hear from you in terms of your thoughts around that. What is good knowledge and where does it then get passed over to those subject matter experts around those improvements?
Absolutely, yes. Let me just share my screen. I did have literally on the right bit and then it's disappeared off my screen. There we go. Okay, I'm going to do a whistle-stop tour of that subject matter. I think I want to tell you a bit about the why and the what as much as anything, because some of this is going to matter at some point to certain people. So just a bit of knowledge around EPCs as much as anything. I don't know how well this is known, but there are actually two types of EPC. There's a domestic one and a non-domestic one, and they focus on different things, and therefore what the EPC says and how people use them and how people attribute value to them is different. So we're predominantly focusing on domestic matters here, and the focus of a domestic EPC is around fuel poverty, and the cost of fuel is really important in that A to G rating appears on the EPC. And if you have that in the back of your mind when we look at heat pumps in a second, that'll make a bit of sense. They are an asset rating, and they allow people to compare one property with another. You don't have any consideration about the people living in those buildings. So it is literally just what is the asset and what rating is that asset. They are valid for 10 years. This may change, and I'll cover that in a second as well. And also, it's important not to rely on older information that may be out of date. I think that's a really important message to take away, is that the EPC is only as accurate as at the time of the survey, and things may have changed, and therefore the picture and what is being advised to the homeowner may change as well, or the prospective homeowner, should I say. And there is quite a lot of change coming in our industry. So we've got an EPC reform consultation, which is due very soon. That could be just before summer. We're hoping to see it this year at the very least. And there's a load of things wrapped up in there about how we're going to change the EPC and make it more effective for its future uses. We've also got a new methodology coming this year, which is about how does the EPC get put together, what goes into the calculation. It is going to be more accurate. It is going to take longer to produce, and there's going to be some impact on cost around how those EPCs are produced. So I expect them to be more costly in the future. We're expecting to see that sometime this year around summertime, and we'll be able to get a date out when we know it. Further on from that, we've got a brand new model coming into the market called the home energy model. It's under consultation at the moment, and that really will change the game and move us towards more accurate modelling and a better understanding of how buildings perform, so that we can make some really, really good decisions on buildings. But as it is, we're in a sort of a transition phase at the moment. Just remember, change is coming. Why is all this happening? Because we're moving towards our legally binding target for being net zero by 2050, and that means decarbonisation and a move away from fossil fuels. So if you've got a gas burning boiler in your property, at some point between now and 2050, so quite a long period of time, we're going to see a shift away from those boilers to renewable heating systems of some kind, decarbonised heating. So it is a transition. It is moving towards electric. There's different ways of using electric to heat our homes, heat pumps being a primary one, but there are others. And also that also impacts on how we transport ourselves around the country. Our cars are moving towards electric vehicles. Again, there are other technologies out there. So it's all sort of swirling around at the moment. We are in this period of transition. In amongst that is the EPC, which helps us identify to a prospective homeowner what could be done to improve the building in terms of energy efficiency. And these recommendations appear on the EPC sort of halfway through. They're designed to be, they manifest themselves when the recommendation saves somebody some money and it creates an improvement to the EPC rating. Some of the measures, like a heat pump, don't necessarily do that. They actually reduce the amount of carbon emissions, which again is not a primary focus of a domestic EPC. So they may or may not appear. And at the moment, things like heat pumps don't appear, but that is changing. So again, another point of change, we're going to see different recommendations coming onto the EPC. So again, bear that one in mind. So in terms of what's important in terms of interventions, packages of measures, it's important that packages are installed in the correct way, in the correct order. So you wouldn't necessarily want to change a heating system without first thinking about the fabric. It's called a fabric first intervention. And you want to maximize benefit to the new occupant. Also, there's a consideration around disruption. So you don't want to do one measure and then 2 months later do another measure and have a similar level of disruption. I also want to make sure that we're adding value to the property as well, and talk about return on investment, but also how things affect the net present value of the property. What we want to end up with is a sort of like a sensible intervention for each property in the UK over the next 30 years. We want a good level of insulation. In some properties that's possible, some properties it's not so easy. We want to move towards a low carbon net zero heating source, like a heat pump. We need to think about the ventilation of the property, because as you seal it up, we need to ventilate better. And certainly things like PVs, solar power, batteries, that could be the car, but some form of storage within the property seems really, really sensible. So that's what a good package probably looks like. We'll just pull away on some of those individually. Insulation is a win-win-win. It saves money, it saves energy, it saves carbon. The problem is it's not always easy to justify on a return on investment point of view, because it's got a long payback period and it's quite expensive. But it should add to the asset value. Solar PV is really compelling. A lot of people don't understand it, so that's a big tick in the box. It saves money straight away. You can store the energy that's generated on there and use it at appropriate times. You can also sell it back to the grid. It's there to be appreciated from the outside of the building, so people get it. And I certainly feel, and I think others will agree, it adds value to the property as well. So again, really, really compelling measure. Heat pumps are more difficult. Heat pumps work. I hate it when we hear the bad press about how they don't work. They don't work because people don't really understand how they are designed to work. But a correctly sized heat pump is designed to be really, really efficient, run at about 4 times the efficiency of a gas boiler. So they work. The problem we have at the moment is electricity is about 4 times more expensive than gas. So really they're only about, if you get it right, pretty much replacing that boiler without any detriment to the occupant. It shouldn't cost them more, but it could. because it's, they are the way that they're designed to work. They work at lower flow temperature and therefore should be more efficient. You've got to get that right. And ideally, you want to team that up with some good levels of insulation as well. So there's going to be some examination of that, some changes potentially to the way that fuel prices are in this country. But until that point, really, it's just about making sure when we install a heat pump in a property, it's no more expensive than the gas alternative. What it does do, it saves a whole heap of carbon, which is fantastic. And some people will really prioritise that and understand that. There are obviously some incentives out there at the moment to make the equation of cost of install work, and therefore there should be some appreciation that can add value to the property and probably won't cost as much as that value has been added to the property. EPCs are going to start recommending them soon. They're not a recommendation that you see on EPCs at the moment, but that is coming. So please bear that one in mind. So just to sort of summarise, EPC results are assigned to impact the value of the perceived value of a property. Buyers are starting to recognise that. They're starting to prioritise the EPC rating a little bit more, and there's more awareness, I think, because of the cost of fuel and the cost of energy crisis. And up-to-date EPC is really important because things change at a property. The EPC itself is going to change this year. So if you've got a 9-year-old EPC, and then we're going to selling a property in the next 6 months, it's probably worth getting an up-to-date EPC anyway because of that fact. And the new methodology will have some impact. We should get more accurate assessments. The survey is going to take more time, and we're going to see new recommendations, particularly heat pumps, appearing on the EPC. Make the most of your energy assessor. They are the experts. They're the ones who understand what goes into an EPC and what makes the big differences. And at a time of change, that's really, really useful. Thank you very much.
Great, thanks, Andrew. I think what you've demonstrated there to that original question of actually how much information do brokers need to know to engage there, it's complex, isn't it? It's hugely complex. But the critical piece here is that there's a huge opportunity from both a cost and a carbon perspective to be able to start to have that conversation with their customers, and then point them in the right direction in terms of that subject matter expertise, and flagging obviously those EPC pieces. So I think in terms of those interventions, we'll come back to some Q&A live questions in a bit, but moving on to our third presentation, that's going to be to James, is going to be talking to us about the role of energy efficiency in homes, specifically in supporting affordability for new builds in particular. So James, if you'd like to do your presentation.
Thanks very much, Pam. Just wait for my slides to pop up. There we go. Can you see them okay?
Yeah, it's great.
Excellent. Good morning, everyone. Thanks very much for taking the time to listen and join this fantastic webinar. So what I'm going to do is take 5 minutes just to talk you through around Leeds Building Society, sort of groundbreaking way of assessing affordability for new build and therefore more energy efficient properties. But I want to give you sort of a bit of a backstory as to how we came about looking at this. So at Leeds Building Society, putting home ownership within reach of more people, generation after generation, is our purpose, and therefore we are very focused around first-time buyers. And the aim of this slide is to try and help you understand the sort of plight that first-time buyers are facing at the moment. The slide uses some ONS data based on the average house price in England versus the average salary going back as far as 1953. And the average house price back in 1953 stood at a whopping £1,692, with the average salary being £333. So that worked out as around 5 times salary. Fast forward to 2022 or 2023, and the average house price now stands at just shy of 290,000, with the average salary being at around 34,000. So you're at 8.52 times salary. So this particularly has an impact on first-time buyers, especially, and also young people, and their ability to get a foothold onto the housing ladder. With rates of home ownerships between the ages of 25 and 34 have pretty much collapsed over the last 30 years, and the average deposit that's required for a first-time buyer has gone from around sort of 62,000 and is now sort of jumping up. There were some figures out from TSB which shows nearly at 70,000 now. So it's taken even longer for someone to save for a deposit, around sort of 10 years. And it's likely that they're going to need some form of help from their parents, whether it be that they get a gift from their parents or that they're going to be living for them rent free. So it's one of the major issues here is that there isn't enough housing stock in the UK and there isn't enough homes being built. And we estimate from our own research that over the next 15 years that the UK is going to require a further 5 million homes on an average of around 340,000 a year, which is way above what the government's current target, which hasn't been achieved since 1971. So it means that housing is probably its least affordable for around 150 years, and it means that we need to do more about it. And so at Leeds Building Society, we've started to take that look of how can we help support this first-time buyer market. But we've also got the other sort of challenge at the moment, in that we need to sort of move towards being carbon neutral as a business. So it means that, as we've all sort of stated before, that we need to reduce our carbon footprint by 50% by 2030 and then get to carbon neutral by 2050. So like all lenders, we're working on our carbon emissions, the different scopes of 1, 2 and 3. And scope 3 in particular is the one that's probably going to be most relevant today, is that because that's based on our sort of wider supply chain, which includes our mortgage properties. When thinking about that, it's like, how are we going to be able to bring our average EPC rating up? The average UK EPC rating at the moment, from what I understand, is a D. How are we going to bring that up to a C to be able to reduce the amount of carbon that our properties are using in the UK at the moment? So this led to us looking at ways at how, if we were to help people buy more energy efficient homes, what impacts will it have on their actual costs, and then how can we fix that into affordability? So I draw your attention onto the slide to the bit just in the middle, EPCD. There's a yellow bit, shows that the average bill for 2022 was £1,179. But from looking at the ONS data that we use, we understand that it's going to be around a 20% saving if someone was to move into an energy efficient new build property rated A or a B on an EPC rating. We've taken some statistics which show that around 85% of all new build properties built since 2020 has an A or a B rating, and therefore those customers who are buying those properties will benefit from that 20% saving. So we've used that ONS data to factor into our affordability assessment to increase lending to customers buying new build properties post 2020 and rated an A or a B on an EPC rating. And I've got a slide next which will show you how that can impact your customers and the benefit it can offer them. So you see here, we've got just a standard scenario. This is actually a real life scenario that worked for one of our customers. So they're first time buyers and they've got a joint income of 55,000, with the first applicant having a loan commitment of £250 and the second applicant having childcare costs of £500. They're looking to borrow over a 25-year term with a loan amount required of 165 and the property value of 220, with a loan to value of 75%, as I mentioned, with one dependent. So these are some screenshots from our affordability calculator. I want to draw your attention to the just to the bottom left-hand corner of the slide on the left. That shows that you've marked that the property's been built pre-2020. So it means that in our view, it's second-hand, and therefore you're getting our normal salary multiple. So we know it's a second-hand property, and based on that, we can lend £156,066. So sadly, getting less than what they actually want. Now I would normally sort of ask for you all to put in some bids, but I don't think we're going to have time and the functionality to do that. So I'm going to skip forward onto the next screen. So we've now changed that the property is built from 2020 onwards. So therefore, the system now recognises that it's a more energy efficient new build property built after 2020, and we can then lend £178,807, which is an increase just shy of 23,000. So obviously this is a scenario that works very nicely to show you an example of this. I think the key things to remember when using this for your customers is that the maximum that we can lend to someone is 4.75 times their salary. So if you've got a customer who has got really good affordability, no dependents, no commitments, then the amount that we'll be able to lend them is 4.75. So if they don't have any debts or children, it means it's very likely that that's what we're going to be lending them straight away. So there isn't any room for us to increase that, whereas it works very well with families who might have some debts or some children. So it means that rather than getting that 4.75 times salary straight off the bat, it means that they're going to be getting more like 4 times or 4.5 times salary. So it builds in that bit of space where we can then use the energy efficiency of the property to increase the loan amount that we're able to give them. That's it from me. I'll hand you back to Pam.
Brilliant, thanks, James. Really good to see the work, obviously, that you're doing in terms of that affordability piece. And it actually leads on to a key question that I've got. Why isn't increased affordability for increased energy efficiency standard across the industry? Obviously, given what we've heard this morning. James, Richard, would one of you like to dive in and answer that question, please?
Yeah, well, I think the simple fact on that is that we're really at a very nascent stage of the market on this. I think for me, the key focus is the fact that more and more lenders are now supporting the green agenda, and we've got a variety of different innovations. I think we will see the affordability piece, and just to be clear, massive hats off to Leeds for sort of leading on this and being the first. Accord have recently followed. I think we're going to see a lot more lenders come to the party. But yeah, there is a lot of good stuff happening, from affordability changes to education. There's a lot of lenders that are putting tools out there. I think increasingly we'll see more partnerships with the likes of Luke and PropFlow that will enable people to find the right solutions to green their home. And I think the big part that we've all got to play on this is really that sort of raising awareness and education. I think if you ask the average consumer, most people, we've got a stock issue in the UK, so most people buying a home, unless they're buying a new build property, are probably buying something that isn't perfect and they need to go and do some work to it. If they had access, the hardest part is finding a builder who's available and a builder who's affordable and the materials are affordable. But if you gave most people the choice, if it was going to cost you X to do it in a certain way, but if it was going to cost you Y to do it and make your home more energy efficient, would you be prepared to pay a little bit more and it'd be good for the planet? I think most people would do that. But we need to sort of get to a point where the accessibility of and awareness of what customers can do is more readily available.
Yeah, really great point, Richard. As we said, I think there's so many perceptions and myths, aren't there, that we need to actually all be tackling in unison to be able to drive that kind of knowledge and information. So brilliant. I'm now going to take some questions from the live Q&A. It's great. We've had a couple that have been picking up on after Andrew's presentation in particular. So now I'm going to open this out to the panel. So Phil has said, I think many homeowners recognise the benefits of bringing their improvements to the homes, which I'm sure we all agree, but currently the ROI doesn't justify the cost. How much do the panel see this changing as more adoption reduces cost and potentially government incentives come into play? So who'd like to take that one? Luke, do you want to go?
I can probably take that, yeah. I suppose doesn't currently justify the ROI, that the cost doesn't... I think you need to unpack that a little bit. So, for example, solar panels, that's they've been decades around, and actually the cost has come down, and government incentives have been withdrawn. I got solar panels. The business case just stacks up. If it doesn't add the value to the property, you'll get it in energy savings for sure. So I think where the ROI tends to get a bit iffy is with whole house approaches to retrofit, where you might include some quite potentially invasive, quite major works like internal or external wall insulation, floor insulation, that sort of thing. And I think that's where you need to take a longer term view. So I think, what benefits are you actually sort of incorporating into the sort of business case that you're doing? So, for example, if you take into account increased thermal comfort, better financial stability. So let's say you're retiring and you want low bills or consistently and sort of predictable bills. You've got other considerations than just sort of will it repay within 5 years? I think there's also a mindset shift that needs to take place. That is not about when will I get my money back, but if I do these works, what is the net present value of doing these works? And then is that reflected in the property price, the property value? or is it, do you get that through increased rental yield, for example? So yeah, I think it's more nuanced than does the ROI justify it or not? It's there's other benefits, and I think mindset shifts that need to take place as well. And there are government incentives with heat pumps. So when there is lower uptake, then that's where costs will come down with volume for sure. I don't know if anyone else has got some points.
Yeah, Richard, there's lots
absolutely.
of nodding.
Yeah, you can see me itching to come in there. So I'll take the other part of the question, which touched on government incentives. So that's absolutely what is needed now. We need proper intervention to drive this. James alluded to the fact that lenders have got targets to become carbon neutral by a certain by 2050. The country has as well. And back to the point I made earlier, we're at very nascent stages in the market. It requires some bold thinking at the top, and a long-term housing policy and strategy to drive the appropriate change that we need. I think, and there are a few things that potentially could happen. So Andrew touched on heat pumps, for example, at the moment, and the cost of electricity versus gas. If the government were to make a change to drive down the cost of electricity, all of a sudden the value of heat pumps skyrockets. There's things that could happen. I also think that they missed a trick by not doing something around stamp duty. Maggie, we've seen what a force for a positive impact on the market in terms of volume stamp duty incentives can be. But imagine if anyone buying an older property was incentivized on a stamp duty rebate to go and do home improvements that made the property more energy efficient, improve the EPC rating. That would be an incentive to the consumer, but it would also flow lots of other money back into the economy from the people who undertake the work and what have you. So there's lots of things that can happen. We just need the government to lead on it so that lenders, brokers, prop tech and climate tech can support it.
I think just stepping on that, and I don't want to focus on this one single point, but your return on your investment is very much based around the cost of the installation. We've just talked about that, but the cost of the fuel as well. When we have these cost of living crises, it does focus minds and it does flip that equation over. I certainly don't want to see people being plunged into fuel poverty so that they have to make this decision. But you could perhaps look at it in a slightly different way. If the government were to say, right, well, we're changing the EPC slightly. We've got another metric on here, which is about carbon emissions, and we're going to start targeting that. That changes what becomes valuable. And if carbon then becomes more important, then we will see things like heat pumps becoming more au fait and a bit more of a focus, and also things like insulation will have an added value because insulation does all the things. I'm a big fan of, even if we could find this holy grail of a single way of producing all the energy we ever need, we still really ought to reduce how much energy we're using. It just makes common sense. Anyway, I'll get off my soapbox.
It's a good soapbox to be on, I'd suggest, Andrew. Moving on, sorry,
James,
Luke.
Did you have a comment on that?
Yeah,
as well?
it was just
Sorry, James.
when looking at the return on investment, we've been working very closely with a developer in Nottingham, Keepmate Homes, that are building homes to the new Future Home standard. So it means that these homes are going to reduce, in terms of from them being built, they're reducing the amount of carbon being produced in the build process by 90%. And they're going to be lasting for 150 years, and the homes are going to run at around 57% less energy and at around 45% less cost. Now, we've had the tricky bit with that is working with our surveyors to help them to understand the added value in those properties versus the other homes on the site, to make sure that we weren't suddenly going to get a lot of down valuations and things along those lines. So, and one thing that Keepmate's done something that's really interesting, they're not trying to gain any extra value on the extra technology and facilities that have been put in. It's purely just based on the value. And we have seen from our surveyors now, just a return on that. Those properties are being sold for more because of the, I suppose, the long-term investment that's gone into them and the energy savings that's based on it. And we're working really closely with them to assess how we can utilize that, because these aren't just A or B properties, these are future home standards. How can we work with them closely to make sure that we're then giving the customer the benefit of the affordability that they're going to get from the lower energy bills? So although in the retrofit piece it might not be perfect yet, but when the future home standards come in, I think that's going to be in the perfect position for us to be able to utilize more affordability for customers, and there will be that return on investment.
I think that's really interesting, James, and I would love to see a future EPC show and demonstrate really clearly that those buildings have been built to those standards so that the consumer can make really good choices.
And actually thinking about that, I think there's a broader question that I'd like to put to the panel is around obviously the energy efficiency and how it affects the value of property. Because again, there's so much speculation. We have a question that's come in from Fiona Scott talking about the ROI and again, breaking down these myths about the investment versus obviously the kind of payback. So thinking about that value of the property, would people like to just add in some insights into that, Luke? Perhaps?
I think one part of this it is around perceptions, right, and almost self-fulfilling prophecies. If we say it is worth this much and the net present value translates to property value, then that is the standard, and it's default, right? So I think it is around perception. I think Fiona had there was a question around heat pumps, and I don't think it's necessarily the investment case. I think there's more questions around the practicality. So, for example, my house is perfect for getting heat pumps, but I'm not getting them right now because I would have to put it on my patio, and I'm doing some work to my patio, so I don't want to have to. So there's more of just a practical issue. But there are some homes where it is, completely right. Obviously, new builds, it should just be default. There should, I don't know why we're building new builds now with gas boilers. It should just be heat pumps. It makes sense. And there are a number of specific types of properties that it does make sense for heat pumps. But I think mainly it's more about getting rid of those myths around heat pumps. Even solar panels, there's, even though it's much more mainstream now, there are some people, what does it look like? Will the aesthetics affect the property value? And it's like, no, it doesn't. So I do think we need to get around that. But I think crucially, and as affordability, as energy efficiency is taken into affordability much more, that will be an indirect link to value, because the more buyers can afford for your property will increase the market for your property, which therefore drives demand. So I do think as more and more lenders, and I've spoken to quite a few, and they're either thinking about it or starting to enact this anyway, I think there's going to be more value added to the property for sure, and affordability will be driving that.
I totally agree with what Luke's just said in terms of those perception points. Are we seeing a lot of information that demonstrates greening a home significantly adds value? Probably not, but again, it's still very, very early days on this. There is some good data out there and good research out there. So Rightmove, obviously one of the largest, well, arguably the largest brand in property, did their Greener Homes report, and I can read verbatim, but they said that greening a home commands an additional price premium on top of local house price growth, with an average of almost £56,000 for homes that had improved their EPC rating from F to C. There is research out there that shows the demand. I think that's only going to grow. Just as COVID, that sort of typified people looking for a different type of home, the race for space. We all wanted a room that we could work from, or a bit more green space, and lots of talk of the exodus from cities and things like that. I think the impact of the cost of living crisis and energy bills will have shifted people's mindsets on quite drastically on wanting to find a more energy efficient home. And as I say, it's probably fairly early days. Certainly in the rental market, landlords, again, Rightmove data, they said 1 in 5 tenants is actively seeking something that's more cost effective for them, cheaper bills. So does it currently impact value significantly today? Who knows? It certainly impacts saleability, lettability, desirability of the property.
Brilliant, it's a great one. We've actually got a question. It is a bit of a deep dive, but I think it's worth kind of unpicking a little bit. We have somebody who said, we've been told we can't have them, I'm assuming that's around the heat pump piece, due to the ground on which our house, over 25 years old, is built from. Again, we know that there's some really specific points here, but in terms of being under how as an industry we can start to obviously, as we say, break down some of these perceptions. Does anyone want to come back on the kinds of response for that? You've got a house that desperately wants to do something and there's some critical barriers. Andrew, I can see you nodding.
I'm thinking. I might be thinking as I speak. So here we go. A heat pump isn't for every property. Every property can't have a heat pump. But there are lots and lots of different ways of doing them. But if you can't go heat pump, that's fine. There are things like high heat retention storage heaters, as an example. They're really, really clever and can work on variable tariffs, and that might be one solution. It might be that something else comes along that allows it. But I think if it's an air source heat pump, usually they can be located pretty much anywhere, as long as sort of the noise abatement piece is observed, and that might be the trick. Certainly on flats, it's quite difficult, I would imagine. But again, it all comes down to the fact that where we are today isn't going to be where we are in sort of 5-10 years time. This is a moving feast, and the world is going to change, and what doesn't work now may work in 5 years time, 10 years time.
But that also doesn't stop people doing stuff now, right? Solar panel. So I had a thermal survey done on my property, detected a number of areas where there were gaps. I spent 30 quid on sealant and expanding foam, addressed those bits, and it improved my sort of the warmth of my home. I've got solar panels and a battery. There are things that you can do now: loft insulation, cavity wall insulation. A lot of these do good, net present value. I think, it's just there's certain circumstances where heat pumps might not be suitable for you. But there are, like you said, high heat retention storage heaters. There are like new technology heat batteries coming on. I looked at those; they're really interesting as well. That it doesn't mean that you should not do anything. And I think one of my points in my presentation was it is an ongoing journey to net zero. And so they might start off with some low level, LED lighting, loft insulation, some low cost, pieces. But then in a few years' time, they might get solar panels. A couple of years after that, when the boiler breaks down, it might be suitable to have a heat pump or an alternative, infrared heating, high storage heaters, that sort of thing. So I think key point is act now, but it is an ongoing journey.
It loops back round, doesn't it? Sorry, Richard.
Just to build on that, Luke, it's not also just about the home. It's also about consumption and behaviour as well. And I think to your point, Luke, everybody can genuinely make a difference. If we all take the attitude sort of, I won't do anything until I can get a heat pump, then we're not going to address this problem at all. It's for homeowners, thinking about the appliances that they buy, for example. Can they buy a washing machine, dishwasher, things that are more energy efficient, that are more cost effective for them longer term? And I think we sort of need to see a big mindset shift in behind this. So it's not just about the EPC rating, but it's about what happens in the home as well. And I think gradually we'll see technology, education, awareness that supports that come into play.
And the challenge for brokers, sorry, Pam, the challenge for brokers and the opportunity for brokers is making sure they've got flexible products. They understand the needs of their customers. So even if they're not doing retrofitting right now, in a few years' time when they might want to, they've got maybe additional borrowing from green lending from their lender, for example, or they've got flexible products which they're able to finance some of these more major works. So I think that's where the opportunity is.
Yeah, just picking up on that, I think we were talking about the opportunity. Actually, no, James, dive in. Sorry, I'm not going to cut you out again. Carry on before we lose the thread.
I don't mean to be the, I suppose, I just want to make sure everyone's been so positive about it. But if you are planning on, or your customer is planning on getting these changes made to their property, whether it be installing solar panels, getting cavity insulation put in, urge your customers to check with their lender and insurer that they're okay with the changes that are being made. There are some changes, and there are some solar panel providers that if those were to put on properties with Leeds Building Society, then it could mean that mortgage would then fall out of bed with us. And so it's really important that you check with your lender if you've got a mortgage on the property, and with your insurer to make sure that they're okay with the changes that are being made.
Yeah, really important point, James. Thank you. So looping back, I think, again, listening to the panel, we've heard around what are the opportunities for brokers in terms of that engagement, the principles of fabric first, thinking about the renewable energy solutions that might be applicable to their properties. And actually, as we said, taking them on that journey, which is, little interventions can still drive down and improve, obviously, efficiency. Talking about efficiency and actually when customers and homeowners should be thinking about actually doing or taking on interventions, how does seasonality affect people when they want to retrofit? Again, getting people in the mindset. We've talked so much of this as a shift of mindset, and that seasonality piece is probably quite an important trigger point. Does anybody want to come back and give thoughts on that?
Yeah. Andrew,
Sorry, Luke, you go ahead.
So, I suppose it's just being aware that, renovations happen year round. It's just a different type of improvements that might take more precedence in certain quarters of the year. So, when people start firing up their boilers in sort of October time and they start breaking and they need to replace their heating system, those types of solutions, tend to sort of come to the fore. When it's springtime now, a lot of people start committing to solar panels because it's getting lighter. I want to take advantage of this for the summer. It's just really understanding that in terms of if you do want to engage your customers in energy efficiency, and maybe in marketing campaigns, just taking that into account. And it might be different from your sort of current rhythm in terms of like the property market, whether it's remortgages or when people buy properties, it might be a slightly different rhythm to that.
Andrew, do you want to add to that?
It's kind of like people buying soft top cars, isn't it? And convertibles. It's like, the summer's coming. I'd like a convertible. It is right. We do see these sort of peaks and troughs year round, but it is important to note as well that when there are sort of peaks within people's interest, it tends to be some difficulties finding an installer that can install it in that period of time. And inversely, you might get a better deal or more availability when there isn't so much demand. It is also important to stress that certain interventions are more difficult in winter. They're naturally installed in summer. So external wall insulation, once the temperature gets quite low, isn't the best time to be doing it because of the way it's applied to the property. So that's worth bearing in mind.
Brilliant, thank you. Moving on to sorry, Richard.
Winter as well. Sorry to cut in, but who delayed turning on their heating for as long as humanly possible post rising energy bills and cost of living crisis. So of course it has an impact. I think with all the rising costs, I spend half my time running around our house shouting at my kids to turn the lights off because the rising cost of everything in the last couple of years has given a demonstrable impact to what we all spend on our bills. I think the impact as things sort of get colder. I mean, we had a couple of heat waves, and a lot of people in the last couple of years over summer, and lots of my friends were talking about bemoaning the fact that the UK doesn't have a culture of air conditioning like we do on the continent. That might start to have an impact as climate change becomes more and more paramount. This is only going one way unless we take drastic action.
Yeah, really key point there. Actually, I'd like the panel to answer technical questions. So what do brokers need to provide to get enhanced affordability? So I think this is one for you, James. So in terms of that, do they need to provide EPC?
So we've already assessed the risk based on this due to using the ONS data. So they don't have to provide anything. As soon as they've ticked the box to say that it's been built post 2020, our system automatically assumes that it's a new build property, and therefore they're getting the enhanced affordability assessment. Our application system can also pick it up because it's that point that we'll ask more details about the property, and therefore we'll ask when the year the property was built. So if the broker was to miss out on that, on the affordability assessment, doing the decision in principle or the affordability assessment using the calculator, then our application system will then pick it up when they put in the property details and give that extra bit of affordability.
Great. We've got another one, which is how do we prioritise engaging customers against competing demands like protection? So, Richard, would you like to answer that one?
Yeah, so I think this goes back to the point I made earlier, where we're seeing lots of initiatives from lenders, various different ones, affordability tweaks. We've had another lender, NatWest, have actually paid for 9 customers to retrofit their home. We've got Nationwide offering 0% finance. So there's lots of things that actually, in a lending climate where margins are tight for lenders, they are sort of putting their money where their mouth is and making solutions. I actually think, given the point I made earlier about brokers being the catalyst, the gateway to good advice, lenders could actually make it easier for brokers by incentivizing them. Lenders need to make their back books more carbon neutral. They've got, in the broker market, they've got an entire workforce at their disposal, where if it was a greater reward, because if a customer needs a 25 grand further advance to go and get solar panels or put in a heat pump or make some small changes, there's not a great incentive for a broker to advise on that. So I think lenders can actually back lenders to support them in helping do this. That's an innovation that I'd love to see. Of course, very, very selfish commercial angle from a man that runs a brokerage.
So, Rich, are you saying to increase proc fees based on the energy efficiency of the mortgage that we get?
Potentially, yeah. If it is a case of single applications that are offering demonstrable impact to the energy efficiency of the home, that is a potential answer. Again, back to the Nationwide further advance, that they're giving away the financing for free, but there's been very little take up. I think that's a potential solution. It's back to the point, we need radically different thinking beyond product on this. As I said, absolute plaudits to you guys for what you've done on affordability. This is potentially another different angle. It's not to the point Andrew made. There isn't a one size solution, a one size fits all solution in greening the home. There shouldn't be a one size fits all solution in driving the impact to the market.
I'm Richard. I completely agree, and I think part of this is firstly making it, as simple as possible for the broker, and if anything, as no work at all. But at the moment, as you say, that's more effort than what it probably costs in terms of time to sort of set and advise on those like the 0% finance, for example. And I think instead of the bank paying, this is where we come in and we're offering an incentive as well. So commit up to £700 for doing those retrofit works, which the improvement suppliers would have to spend anyway in terms of direct marketing and channels. So the consumer's not being, in fact, we're getting bulk discounts for consumers, so passing that on to them. Plus, then the lender, the broker wins as well in terms of getting some, making it actually juicy enough for them to, make it worth their while when there are competing demands like insurance protection and that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, good point. James, did you want to come in on that?
I suppose in the spirit of things of thinking while I'm speaking, while I'm thinking, the challenges of being able to incentivize brokers, through proc fee, that would be very tricky for us to put into place. I'm guessing it would be tricky for the brokers to regarding the advice process of wanting to make sure that you not being swayed by different lenders based on how much they're paying would be a tricky situation to be in as well. So like what Rich says, it's not, we have to go past what we're doing at the moment. Green mortgages, it's been fantastic. We've seen a massive increase in the amount of, from only just 2 years ago, the amount of green products that are available. But being really honest and been sat in the room where we're trying to design those products, none of them have been market leading where you want to go away and shout about it. It's the couple of bips off here, 500 quid cash back there. It's not anything that's really going to have a massive impact. So yeah, I suppose Rich is right. We need to start thinking outside the box, and if that means looking at different ways of incentivizing brokers, then it's a discussion we can have.
Great. Mindful of time, we're now at 29 minutes past, so we're going to be closing our webinar for today. So I'd like to do a huge thanks to all of our panelists for attending and sharing their expertise. To our listeners, fantastic. Thank you very much for coming online and speaking to us today. And we'd like to remind you of a follow-up webinar from PropFlow, which is actually going to be held on the 11th of April. This is specifically for homeowners themselves, where we're going to be doing a deep dive into why energy efficiency, shining a light on all of the cost reductions and all of the topics we've discussed today. So thank you one and all for joining us today, and have a great rest of the weekend.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks
Have
very
a great
much.
weekend.